All right, let's do this. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Was It Good?
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Do we need to turn the AC off?
Nope. So the reason we got this specific AC is that it should be quiet enough where it cannot be picked up. But I suppose we should ask Michael.
I have no idea, but it feels good.
It feels good, and yeah, I think it's quiet enough, hopefully. This will either be the best podcast or the worst podcast.
I mean, I don't hear it in my headphones.
Okay.
If you're listening at home, do tell us if you hear
Do you see
the
it on
annoying
any
sound.
of the mics when we're quiet?
You haven't been quiet. Wow, podcast gold. No, I don't see it on the mics.
Then we're
Beautiful.
good.
That means we're good. All right, let's start this in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Was It Good? Today, we'll be talking episode 2 of Loki. I'm Krishna. I'm here with my one brother, Arjuna, and Mr. Michael is in the producer's chair. As you might know, there's usually 3 of us, but the third brother, Ravi, is off gallivanting across Boston. So, there's that. It's just 2 of us today.
Boston.
He's probably saying, "Go Red Sox, bitch." I think Ravi's actually watching is actually watching right now in the comments on youtube.com/wasitgood. Ravi, how many times have you said "Go Red Sox, bitch"? Please let us know.
Probably 6 times.
6?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna take the under. I think he's done it 5.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
He's probably done it 0.
0? Yeah, you're right.
I don't even think he knows what a Red Sox is.
That's true. In fact, he made a point actually before heading out there that he was not going to see a Red Sox game. So
Yeah, there you go.
that's how anti-Red Sox he is.
Though, according to Lauren, they weren't even playing there this weekend.
Oh, okay. So they're on the road somewhere.
Yeah,
Probably
probably.
Tampa.
I think they just did a Atlanta stint.
Oh. Well, anyway, we're not here for the Red Sox, as Ravi would say. We're here for Loki episode 2. Weeks are flying by, so let's just jump right in. Every week, we recap these episodes and movies and TV shows with a single word to sum up the experience. It could either be around the product itself or just the viewing experience in general. So, Arjuna, why don't you go ahead since there's only 2 of us? Wow.
I get to go first?
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing, I know.
Amazing. My one word is going to be nothingness.
What?
Yes.
Nothingness.
The reason I'm going to go with nothingness is because one of my favorite scenes in this episode has to do with when Loki is figuring out that the Loki variant that they are hunting down could potentially be hiding in apocalyptic events, right?
Yep.
And in his proof of this is you could literally do anything to any of the people there in that environment, but then if it's wiped out, there's no consequences. There's no variance kind of detected by the TVA. Yeah. And to kind of prove this point, Loki and Mobius travel to Pompeii.
Yep.
And Loki goes out. Mobius is like, okay, well, can you make some bird noises?
So
just so we can, just introduce
Test
a little
the- test-
variance,
test the
right?
theory.
And
Yeah,
Loki's like, fuck no. And he goes right up to a wagon, and he's like, you're all going to die.
He frees the goats.
He frees the goats.
Yep.
And then it explodes. People start freaking out. He gets some vegetables, starts throwing it up, and he's like, nothing matters, and does that whole thing, and it truly a fun scene because I at least felt like Tom Hiddleston was having a ton of fun with that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just wacky and fun and nothingness. Nothing matters.
Nothing matters.
And it reminds me, nothing matters.
Nothing matters.
At least in this.
Nothing really matters.
Nothing really matters.
So that's what you got from
Or
this,
maybe
is that
everything
nothing
matters.
That one's harder to believe, to be honest.
I also think it deals with a lot of themes that they talk about in this episode. There's a really good conversation, and as we talk throughout this episode, spoilers ahead, they talk about the TVA and the timekeepers and kind of this idea of free will versus fate. There's a whole conversation that Loki has with Mobius where he's like, you don't question like where you're from or anything. Mobius kind of counters and like, you're like, who is your father? He's an ice giant. Who are you raised by? Odin. I lived in Asgard. And all this. And he's like, doesn't that sound kind of crazy and weird? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And then Loki's like, so you're just saying everything's kind of predetermined, and the timekeepers have determined our entire lives, and there's really no free will. And it's really like interesting existential kind of.
And Mobius doesn't even really answer that question.
No, not at all.
He's like,
I don't worry about I think he says it's like, I don't worry about the details.
Yeah.
He's like, I know like everything's crazy and there's variance, and I just am happy to be in this one and do my job, essentially.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. The most interesting part of the show so far, I think, has been obviously the Loki off of Mobius, like that whole dynamic, but they took it to a different level in this episode with exactly the whole question of existence, what it even means, does it really matter? So,
and I think the TVA kind of does that, right? The TVA, introducing the TVA into the Marvel Cinematic Universe makes you question, like, okay, these previous 20+ movies, was it free will or was it all predetermined? Is this what was supposed to happen?
It's kind of interesting.
I think it makes you kind of wonder, right?
Yeah.
About all that type of stuff too. It's like, I think they even say in the first episode, right? Like, oh, the Avengers going back in time and doing that was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
That was determined to happen. So
So let me ask you this question, right? So how mad would you be if Marvel goes in that direction, where at the end of Loki they establish that there is no free will, everything happens the way it's supposed to, and then sort of the previous 25 movies that was all meant to happen, and so you have to go back and watch those movies now and know and just be like,
I think
what doesn't really matter.
I think the problem with that, and this isn't necessarily like the most unique story out there, where you have some type of time bureau and there's some type of timekeeping and all that, multiverse and but it's a topic that's obviously we've seen before in fiction, and the problem I think you can always run into with there being a quote-unquote sacred timeline or one timeline is when you introduce that element, it's so overpowering that the only way to get out of that element is to destroy it or unkeep it. Like one thing that pops into my mind is the show Legends of Tomorrow. Legends of Tomorrow is all about time travel and all this type of stuff. And the first season has their own type of time association. And the first season ends with them being bad and then destroying these people. And then time is, kind of free willing.
Oh, it's free again.
It's free again. Exactly.
Interesting.
So, maybe they won't go that exact route. Maybe the TVA won't be destroyed, though. At the end of this episode, it's in dire straits because all of these
it looks like a disaster.
Yeah, all these branches are coming up and everything. There's a lot of red alerts right now.
Yeah, I was just about to say, what is it you call that situation? Red alert.
Yeah, exactly.
Multiple times.
Seems like things are not going well for the TVA.
Yeah.
But I would just have a hard time seeing, maybe that's the brilliance of this show, right? To be seen in these last 4 episodes, that I don't think you can have the status quo with this TVA. Otherwise, it might undermine whatever comes next in your Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because then you're just like, it's all predetermined by the 3 space lizards, right? Versus, no, they're like, there's actual consequences. Not that there aren't consequences, but there's actual, things can happen in a way that's not predetermined. Yeah. Even though I suppose it's all determined by the writers.
That's true. That's a great
Kevin
point.
Feige. Maybe the TVA is just Kevin Feige. Maybe it's a whole. What if
that should totally be a bit in this show?
What if the TVA was revealed at the end and it's just Kevin Feige?
It's Kevin Feige, a hologram of Stan Lee and
Bob Iger.
Yeah, I guess so. Actually, so everything you said leads very nicely into what my one-word impression is, and that's nefarious. So I've watched episode 2 twice now, and I just can't help but feel that the TVA is, if not the whole thing is nefarious, is being run by nefarious beings. Loki's sort of our through character, right, into the TVA. He's what's familiar to us. The TVA is like the Narnia, right? And Loki is our main protagonist going into that world. So that's how we're seeing this world. So the fact that he's bringing up to Mobius and kind of mocking like the sacred timeline, like, do you even hear yourself? Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? Also, who are these beings to decide which timeline is the right one and which one isn't, right? Say what you will about Loki. I mean, that is more than a valid point. Totally. Perhaps us and our earthly way of viewing things don't understand, or can't understand that. But from our perspective, that it totally seems maybe not arbitrary, but unfair, right? It's like, what gives them the power? Who are they to decide? Are they infallible? Are they pure, perfect beings that never make mistakes? Because that would be what it takes to decide what a sacred timeline would be, right?
It reminds me of that line in The Dark Knight at the very beginning where they're the imposters of Batman that dress up in the pads. And the guy's like, what gives you the right? And he screams, I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Yeah. So our 3 space lizards are basically like, we're not wearing hockey pads. That's why we get to decide.
What gives you the right?
Yeah. So you're right. The TVA is being set up for definitely some kind of reversal. There's absolutely no way that it's
They
going to
are
go
exactly
back.
what they say they are.
Yeah, and there's no way it's going to go back to this.
Yeah. I think the end of this episode proved that. I don't think you can have all these branches.
The multiverse of
that
madness
are going off now.
It's coming.
And then it's like, oh, yep, we're going back to one clean time.
Yeah, right. And you don't have a title coming called The Multiverse of Madness, and everything's going back to normal after this show. There's just no way. I like it. Like, do you feel like we've been building kind of nicely from WandaVision? So after this, is it we have Black Widow, obviously.
Yep.
When does Doctor Strange come out?
2022.
Okay.
We have a lot in between. So
We do,
if you want to go, I think, chronologically,
Yeah.
we have Black Widow.
Uh-huh.
At least for the movies, we have Black Widow.
Yep.
Then we have Shang-Chi.
Oh, yeah.
Then we have the Eternals.
Oh, man.
And then you have
Shoot.
Spider-Man, No Way Home.
Oh, my God. Yeah. So...
And remember, so Spider-Man No Way Home, there's obviously been a lot of rumors about that movie. We definitively know Alfred Molina is going to be back as Doc Ock. We definitively know Jamie Foxx is going to be back as Electro.
That's amazing.
And then there's
everything else is...
every rumor under the sun
everything else.
Willem Dafoe is coming back as the Green Goblin.
Yes.
Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are coming back as their Spider-Man.
Please.
Every
Emma
villain
Stone?
that's ever appeared. Yeah, Emma Stone, Kirsten Dunst.
Dunst? Yeah, we got Kirsten
anyone
Dunst,
that has ever appeared in a live-action Spider-Man movie is basically been rumored
I
to
want all
join
3,
Spider-Man.
like Aunt May's in there. I want all 3 versions of Uncle Ben, even though we haven't seen Uncle Ben yet, and I don't think, with Tom Holland Spider-Man.
No, we haven't.
So, all right, well, let's move on. There's a lot of really good stuff, and it feels like they're building quite nicely. I like what we've seen. In fact, if you look at everything that's coming out, I feel like Falcon and Winter Soldier is sort of the odd one out, since it doesn't seem, at least on the surface, to deal with any sort of interdimensional kind of thing.
Well, one thing I mentioned to our producer, Michael, before we went live is he has a theory that I'd like to get to at some point.
Definitely break that
But
down.
one thing I feel like one thing that the MCU and Marvel's always tried to do, and this is with their movies too, is they want to tell this cohesive story, but they don't want people who haven't seen every single piece to feel left out, right? And arguably that worked for the majority of their movies. Probably somewhere in Phase 3 with the Avenger movies, you had to watch at least some things that had happened before. But, I wonder, Black Widow is going to be our first movie we've gotten since we started these Disney Plus shows. Obviously takes place in the past, but as we get more and more of these, how much of the elements that happened in the shows will be referenced in the movies?
Right.
And we haven't necessarily gotten that. Like, I think we can surmise with Vision that's going to have some impact in a future movie. But by and large, I think where the main characters began and ended in their shows is roughly the same, right? If you take Wanda, right? Wanda at the end of Endgame showed her off so that she's powerful and she's grieving. Well, she's got a little bit more power now, obviously, at the end of WandaVision. She's still grieving with new additional people to grieve over. And with these new Scarlet Witch powers and whatnot. But I don't think it's enough of a... certainly, like, some big things happened in that show, but I don't think it's so much that can't be explained with a few lines of dialogue, right? And a few bits of imagery. Falcon and Winter Soldier, even to a more so degree.
Yeah.
Endgame ends with with Captain America handing Sam the shield, right? And I think most people can make the jump that, okay, now he's Captain America with that scene. Falcon and Winter Soldier just
icing on the cake, I guess.
It just kind of shows the journey of him having an internal struggle and then actually becoming Captain America. But I think if you watched Endgame and you saw that, you don't necessarily need the...
You would assume that he was Captain America.
You don't need that additional detail, right? Loki might prove to be the first show that there are details in it that you might need for future movies.
Right.
But we'll see. That's
We'll
what
see.
I'm
We'll
curious
see.
about how they're going to play that.
Yeah.
Are they actually going to go all the way? Because I think that's always cool. I think like when you have an organic universe, then you can tell different parts of the story in multimedia. Not so that it just gets like bogged down. It's like I can't understand this movie without it.
Right.
But it gives so much supplementary info. The Clone Wars series to the prequel trilogy, for example, right? Like giving more context, but not necessarily feeling like you can't understand the movies without it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Arjuna spends countless hours and days and months before every podcast curating, researching, polling to create the perfect DVD chapter listing. So in this case, it would be a DVD chapter listing of episode 2 of Loki.
I actually used the TVA, and so I go back in time, and I wrote these years ago.
Even better. Okay, so even better. You've done this for years. Usually, Ravi, who would be sitting here, would pitch it to me and then give me a ridiculous voice to read it in. Since I'm over here and there's no Krishna over there, I will be pitching it to our producer, Mr. Michael Learman, who I'm going to request that he reads this in the voice of Neo from The Matrix.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, the voice in the sky.
Yeah.
I know Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Okay, like that, yeah. Legends of Today? Science 101 with Loki. Clone rings? Scared ice run? Salads don't matter. Nothing matters. It was candy all along. A superior enchantress. Whoa. Boom goes the dynamite. How was that?
That was great.
You know what I loved?
That was
I loved
great.
you did the whole thing, and then I think between the second and last one, you had a very natural Michael laugh in there. You're just like, it was great.
Yeah.
Like you were like,
That was great.
you broke for a second, and you went right back in.
I don't know. I don't know if it's because Michael, I got to listen instead of actually say it. But this might be your best one.
They're
to be
all
honest.
they're all amazing.
Salads don't matter, and then nothing matters. That's a great little.
I don't think people really truly appreciate how amazing these chapter listings are.
Also, superior enchantress, and we'll get into that. Actually, why don't we get into that right now?
Let's get into it.
So I'm gonna go ahead and tell a story, and I might butcher it, but Gina can fix it if I get it wrong. So. Obviously, spoilers, a female variant of Loki appeared at the or near the end of episode 2.
We knew they were hunting a variant of Loki.
Yeah.
I think.
And now it's revealed.
And it seemed like everybody in the TVA, they kept referring to it as a he. They just assumed it was, some version of Tom Hiddleston.
They can ask out of
they
you
even
and me.
showed the variants at the beginning of this episode, and they were all Tom Hiddleston
Yeah.
to some degree, right? Like
Yeah.
there was like the EuroLeague,
Wait, what the fuck?
I didn't Loki. There was
Yeah.
the big hulking Loki.
Right.
There's all these different versions. But the surprise twist at the end of this episode was it was a female Loki.
Yeah. Not even black hair either, blonde.
Blonde, yeah.
Which is, they didn't keep the correct hair color.
Correct.
But and apparently in all the after credits, it's just been Loki variant.
I believe something like that.
Loki variant or
Loki variant.
or something like that. Except in one version of the credits.
Yes.
Do you know what language?
I don't.
So in a different language of the credits, it translates to enchantress.
Yes.
Which is which could or could not be a big spoiler. So Arjuna, I assume you've done the research into Enchantress.
So
Who is she?
I don't want to go into a deep dive here on exactly who Enchantress is, but essentially
Because you don't know.
No, because there are two Enchantresses in Marvel. The first one is an arch nemesis of Thor's.
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah.
One of his greatest adversaries who's in the comics. They fight, huzzah, battle, war. But the second one is the one that's interesting. The second Enchantress is a female named Sylvie Lushton, and she was actually given mystical powers by Loki himself in the comics to create her as a tool of chaos. And
interesting.
that, it seems, that second version, the Sylvie version, is what potentially we could have here. Now, a lot of people, when they saw the female Loki variant, Lady Loki is another thing in the comics.
Oh, another one.
Yeah, Lady Loki is actually a thing. But
Oh, God.
Enchantress is also obviously a big part.
A thing,
She
too.
actually, the second Enchantress actually joins the keyword that has actually kind of been a through line for all of our Disney Plus shows, joins a young superhero team called the Young Avengers. At
Oh,
some
boy.
point.
Oh, boy.
Not
very subtle.
There's a lot of these
yeah.
characters that we've seen
They're
in
just
these
so
Disney Plus shows.
obvious,
It's like,
yeah.
who? Young Avengers, Young Avengers,
Well,
Young Avengers.
I
Young
shouldn't say
Avengers.
obvious. You still have to go on the internet and actually research these people because I don't know who they are.
Right.
But let me ask you this then. I think is it potentially a simple mistake, or do we think it's just too coincidental? It's not a mistake. This is a spoiler.
I think there's two options. I think it was a mistake, right? That this is what who the character is. There was a mistake made on that country's credits part, and they popped in the name maybe too early.
Yep.
Or Marvel has gone next level.
That's true.
And
next level. Wow.
Have gone next level.
Yep.
They've said, how do we top the after credit scene? We drop little hints
What?
within
The credits?
the credits of Disney Plus, because one of the biggest things I feel like, or not the biggest thing, but one thing that's been talked about with Disney Plus, and specifically when these shows end, are the very long credit sections, right? It's 8-ish minutes.
Yeah.
I feel like with.
It's borderline absurd. I mean, there's a lot of people, obviously.
Right, because
but still.
they are crediting all of the international versions, all of the dubs.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that, a lot of people make this show. And a lot of people have to be credited. And maybe they're like, they're looking at the analytics. They're like, so many people dip out before the credits end.
Unbelievable.
What if we dropped a little hint
Oh, my God.
into the credits? So now people will always watch through the end of the credits in case there's any more little spoilers.
And translate every country's credits.
I mean, if you think about it, it worked with the after credit scene, right? There are a lot of people that would just sit around and wait for
almost every movie now.
Not even just Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Any movie, we'll wait for it. And a lot of movies do have an after credit scene. Most of the time, it's a little blooper or it's a little fun gag or whatever. But people will still sit there throughout the whole credits.
Yep.
And wait for it. Maybe this is the way to do that for the Disney Plus credits.
What do they gain from that?
What they gain is people sitting there and crediting those people.
Yeah, the people getting the credit they deserve because they're forcing you to read every credit.
Exactly. They get the credit.
Oh, man.
They're going to start recognizing those gaffers. They're going to start recognizing them.
Do they get credited?
Everyone gets credited.
Everyone.
In theory,
that's why it's 8 minutes.
In theory, everyone in the credits should be credited. I'm sure there are people that don't get credited.
Yeah.
But in theory.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. I mean, based on that little information, that like nugget of Enchantress versus Lady Loki, I feel like you have to pick a camp before you can decide who you think she is, what does she want, and how does she know about the TVA? Because if she is Enchantress version number 2 that you described, it means that either a Loki variant or Loki in the future or just Loki in general gave her powers and set her up to do everything she's doing now. And if she's not, I actually don't know anything about Lady Loki. So is that just I assume then that's just a version of Loki who happens to be female.
Kind of. There's a little bit more to Lady Loki than that, but I kind of wonder, at least with this character, one line that keeps sticking out to me throughout this show, I think specifically in episode 1, and I think they say it in the recap as you're going to episode 2, is Mobius saying, time works a little bit differently here. Yeah. Right? And
seems like it doesn't work. It's broken.
Well, what I think about with time travel, specifically in fiction, and how it's going to be presented here is we're not going to get everything in quote unquote order. And I wonder if that's part of Lady Loki / Enchantress. Because
interesting.
She knows so much about the TVA, correct? Like she's captured people, she has taken their equipment, she's used their equipment, and I understand that they have said that they've been hunting her for a while, she's been doing this for a while, but there has to be, in my opinion, like some type of timeline shenanigans. And I wonder if what Loki and Mobius are doing is what causes this variant to do what she does.
Yeah.
Right.
So just to clarify that a little bit,
Yes.
are you saying that potentially a consequence of that would be every time, let's say, Mobius runs into this Lady Loki, it might be a Lady Loki at a different point in time? So, like, let's say he saw her now, in episode 2. That's, her near the end of this current story. Maybe the next time he sees her, it'll be near the beginning.
Well, we know he followed her at the end of the episode, so I would
Well, I was talking about Mobius.
Oh, Mobius.
I didn't mention, because Loki does follow her.
I mean, maybe. We know Mobius has, like, been involved with a lot of Loki variants. He's clearly a Loki stan.
Yes. He knows a lot about Loki.
He knows a lot about Loki, and I'm not sure if it's just for this case specifically, or he's dealt with other Loki variants before. I would assume he potentially has. As they said, I think in this episode, that the Loki variants are the number one variants that they deal with.
I think there are Mobius variants running around, because that whole scene between him and his boss.
I think it's clones.
Yeah, it could be clones as well. But the fact that she's always like, the whole T rings, and it's like, you've made those rings before, and then she keeps referring to another agent. It seems to me it's a Mobius clone variant. It's like another Mobius essentially, right?
The clone would go with the comic book origin.
And I like this out of time.
And
I like this out of time. Like I like the idea of Mobius from a different time,
right?
Having a meeting with her just before our current Mobius had a meeting. Like she's constantly having meetings with different times of versions of Mobius.
It's also interesting his obsession.
Great idea.
His obsession with jet skis, specifically, something that they actually harp on a little bit in this episode with the magazine, and then the actual discussion about jet skis. How he's never been on one, but he's drawn to them, and how perfect they are, and wanting to do that. It makes me question. And I think we talked about this when we did the first episode of Loki.
Yeah.
Like, are the agents and are the people within the TVA people that are just plucked from time?
Right.
And then kind of...
Or they create from nothing.
You're right.
Kind of like Mobius. That's what Mobius suggests.
Right. That's what he suggests. But
that's what he thinks.
That's what he thinks. But it would be a little weird if that's exactly what it was. So...
But would it, though? I mean, it's like... They're in a strange place where the regular rules of time don't apply.
Right.
So,
but then why give them personalities? Why give them any type of... Why make them different? Why not make them all look the same?
Yeah.
If they're literally just there
it does seem to be inefficient
exactly.
to create a bunch of different versions.
Individuals with everything.
Unless having that difference makes them better at their job, right? Like in theory, if you had everything the same, that eliminates other viewpoints and stuff. So maybe...
Well, that's this question of free will versus, everything being on a set timeline. Do these people actually have free will, or do they not?
I feel like this episode of Was It Good is like a Mobius strip. We're just going around in circles. We keep coming back to the same. We start here, we're just coming back to what is the point? Does anything matter? That's where we're
nefarious
at.
Nothingness.
Yeah. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit. And we touched on this a little bit, I think, in episode 1.
Sure.
And I think this is going to be an ongoing question until it actually gets answered. Timekeepers.
Yes.
Timekeepers. There seems to be 3 of them.
The Time Force.
They look like lizards. Though I think there's
Loki
a line.
calls them lizards.
Calls them lizards. There's a very important line, I think, in this episode where. What is her name?
Ravonna Renslayer.
Thank you, Ravonna Renslayer, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, in a moment. Where she says that the timekeepers are agitated. In fact, she's never seen them more involved in a case before, and to me, that suggests that we've probably actually have seen at least one timekeeper running around. Maybe they're disguised, or we're going to. So, what is your theory? What is your theory on the timekeepers? And now there's a lot of theories.
My theory on the timekeepers is influenced, and I think I said this when we did episode 1. It's influenced by something we reviewed recently, which is Castlevania season 4.
Nice.
Where there was a whole arc where 2 of our main characters were back in the town where Dracula's wife was burned, and there was a royal family, and there was this person that said the royal family, like they're pulling the strings, they're doing stuff, and she's like, you can't see them, they're behind this curtain. It turned out that the royal family didn't exist. They were dead.
They're already dead.
Right?
They did exist, but they were dead.
And I think there's more evidence against this point in this episode, at least. But my theory, and I'll stick to it till it's proven otherwise, is that there are no timekeepers. Right? The timekeepers are kind of like a farce. and it's just
Something
people.
else.
It's just people just trying to determine what is
bureaucracy.
right. Maybe it's some type of nefarious person or group of people or something to just
Elder council.
kind of keep this idea alive. Maybe there were timekeepers at some point, but they got old and crumbled into dust.
Yeah.
Or something. But I think there's a lot of theories out there. In fact, I think there's a theory that our very own producer has.
Yeah. I actually, I'm gonna recite it, and then inevitably when I bungle it, if you can jump in and fix it. So our producer basically, Mr. Michael, let's backtrack a little bit. A character that's very heavily involved with the TVA in the comic books is a guy known as Kang.
Kang the Conqueror.
Kang the Conqueror. And
who we know
he's already been casted.
is coming into the MCU.
He's coming in the MCU. He's already been casted.
His alleged first appearance will be
first appearance, yeah.
Ant-Man 3.
Right. Played by Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors
has
who's
been cast.
From, a favorite of Wizard Goods.
Yes.
From Lovecraft Country.
Yeah. And our producer has a great theory that centers around the idea that Kang has perhaps infiltrated the Timekeepers, is pulling the strings, and perhaps this female Loki that we see at the end of episode 2 is trying to take down the TVA in order to stop Kang's nefarious plans for time. Please let me jump in and expound upon this.
No, that's pretty good. It was just noticing that, Ravonna Renslayer is a right hand of Kang the Conqueror in the comics.
A right hand, you say?
Like maybe even like a lover or something like that.
Or a general or something.
And they're just very blatantly calling her Ravonna Renslayer. They call her R-Slayer in the beginning, then they call her Ravonna, and then at the end in the Hurricane, they call her Renslayer.
That
seems like super obvious. And then I was just thinking and this again, you didn't feel like this was the case, but the shot of the wooden carving of one of the Timekeepers in the center, and this isn't completely all my theory. The infiltration of Kang into the Timekeepers is something that's on. So I've seen it on the internet.
Yeah,
especially
it's floating around. Yeah.
But that shot at the end during the credits, there's a shot of one of the Timekeepers. And it looks so much like if you put Majors in makeup to look like Kang the Conqueror.
I
even
see
like split. Like there's a way they do the effect where part of the face looks like it's off and a mask.
Right.
So it seems.
So I totally see it. I also at least with that image, I also think it could easily not be it as well. It could go either way. I do love that theory because like I said, while watching the episode, I felt like the TVA feels wrong to me. There's something off about it. So the idea that Kang the Conqueror, who's a bad guy, pretty powerful bad guy in the MCU, would be behind things.
A character a lot of people think is like the next Thanos
level thing. Yeah.
How
would he do? I bet I don't know this. Maybe if you want to look it up, I bet he has some ties to the Eternals. I'm sure. I know he has ties. I think to Thor. There's actually a ton. The Thor and the TVA are actually pretty heavily linked. And I'm gonna keep harping on this. One of my theories is that Justice Love is I think an enforcer for the TVA in the comics. And I keep looking at Thor 4's title, Love and Thunder, and I just think that I think that it's going to be directly tied into an aspect of the TVA. I can't help but think that. I think Love and Thunder to me is like Thor or Thor's team versus Love, Thunder versus Love, and Love is going to be the remnant maybe of the TVA or the sacred timeline bullshit.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. It's lots of and we're falling into the trap again. I think we said after episode 1 that we're not going to do this, and we're not going to rampantly speculate.
The WandaVision trap.
We're not going to fall into the WandaVision trap.
Mr. Fantastic is coming.
But this show is just, they're making it almost too obvious. Like Michael said, Renslayer, this Enchantress thing, is really, really.
I mean, that could also just be a translation thing because she enchanted some people.
It's true.
That's also very true.
That's
also very true.
There's that.
The one thing that they said with Ravona's character, and I just read an article about this, and when they introduced the cast, they introduced her as Ravonna Renslayer, and they said this Ravonna specifically, this is what they say, and obviously it could be, to get people off the trail or whatever.
Right.
They say this is a Ravonna that is pre what you see in the comics. So pre... They claim, at least, this Ravonna is before she meets Kang and does all that stuff. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily... We don't know how much pre it is. It could be a day.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like it's like a week before.
It could be, right?
The way things are going.
At the very least, it seems like Ravona's character could appear in more Marvel stuff. Like, she could potentially appear in Ant-Man 3.
Yeah.
If, as we know, Kang is specifically in that movie.
Yeah. It makes me really curious about Ant-Man 3. So... Ant-Man, if Ant-Man 3 goes that way where it introduces Kang, the Ant-Man trilogy might end up being the most interesting progression of movies I've ever seen. First one's like simple heist. Second one, we get into like some weird quantum level stuff. Third one's gonna be straight up like time travel / multiverse stuff. Like what a progression for a seemingly
Well, the third one,
fairly normal guy.
The third one's called Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Quantum Mania. That sounds like a ride at an amusement park. I can't
That's
wait for
probably
that
what
one.
a ride at the Avengers campus at Disneyland will
It's
be
gonna
called
be
at some
Quantum
point.
Mania. I hope so.
2024 when it comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like Michael's theory, and I really like the theory that Kang is going to be introduced in here.
Yeah, I do too.
The hesitation I have, and we talked about this at the top of the show, was, is Disney going to introduce a major, what we assume will be a major player within the MCU first in a Disney Plus show versus the theatrical movie, right? And I think that's like the question of how these companies look at the streaming stuff versus the theatrical stuff. I, as a fan, want it to happen. I hope it happens.
Where they drop a...
Yeah.
That the shows and the movies freely interact.
Yeah, exactly.
I do too.
Like, I think it would be amazing if Kang is a part of the story in some way, shape, or form. And
I don't know why they wouldn't, to be honest, because Disney's plan has to be getting as much people to subscribe to Disney Plus.
Right.
So if this is just making more people subscribe because they need to know, then I don't know why they wouldn't.
I feel like it's because they've shown a bit of a reluctance to do that, at least in the first 2 shows. Small sample size.
Yeah.
But there's been a bit of a reluctance of like really taking a major swing here before you're really doing that. And to be fair, that's kind of what Marvel started with too, right? Like those first few Marvel movies, as fun as enjoyable they are, they don't take major swings in terms of like showing a huge connectivity. The big one obviously being Nick Fury saying like the Avengers Initiative.
I feel like we mention this probably almost every week, but COVID is such a game changer where that might have been the plan perhaps before last year, but COVID has shown that you don't need to rely on the movie theaters, and the fact that you have large segments of people slowly easing their way back in. Theaters aren't going to be at full capacity maybe for a while. I might be totally wrong on that, to be honest. Maybe September comes and the theaters are jam-packed.
I've been
throwing this whole thing out of the way.
I've been in the theaters a couple times.
Yeah, how's it been? Yeah,
they're definitely getting busier.
Okay,
I will say that.
All right, so it's picking up then.
Definitely getting busier. I think Black Widow is going to be a big and fast. I think the 9th Fast and Furious movie comes out next week.
Yeah, Fast 9 will be a great test.
I think that's going to be a big test.
Yeah.
Black Widow, obviously, in a few weeks is going to be another big test.
Are you guys going to go see Fast 9 in theaters?
Absolutely.
I am definitely going to.
I want to see the first 8 first.
I need to see. I need to see
Let's
2
do a
through
marathon.
2 through 8.
Because I saw one.
We saw
with you.
one. Yeah.
Sahara will make us watch the other
for
8,
sure.
I'm sure.
I've seen Hobbs and Shaw.
Great movie. Great movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Wasn't like an amazing movie, but entertaining as heck.
Great sci-fi film.
Yes, great sci-fi.
If the rumors I've read about Fast 9 are true,
Space
will also be a great sci-fi.
Oh man, I can't wait.
I mean, the trailer, like he catches cars, and they have like the chain, like the chain, and the cars swinging around. I mean, it's great.
Yeah,
it's great if you can suspend your disbelief. It's
you got to do that, but that's why it's so good.
Another great progression from what the first movie was, which was a
the most epic progression you've ever seen. I can't wait. They have to do something so intense for F10, Fast 10, because it'll be the 10th movie, in the official
lightsabers.
Oh man, I can't. I guess there's two more things in Loki that I want to touch on. What do we think Loki's endgame is? Yeah, let's start there.
Avengers Endgame?
So do we think Loki's endgame is to create another endgame where he lives and gets to star in an endgame movie?
I think his whole goal is survival, right? And, he knows that if he continues on the prime timeline, he dies.
Oh, okay, I like that.
His throat gets crushed.
Yeah.
And so Loki...
He's nothing if not a survivor.
Right. This Loki, right? Remember specifically, this is the Loki taken from 2012.
Right.
This Loki wants to live.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to die, I assume. I think that's a safe bet.
That's a safe bet for most characters.
Most characters.
Yeah.
And I think back to that first episode where he sees himself die and kind of his motivations, seeing the power of the TVA, that these Infinity Stones, again, they're such a big part of his life, at least the stages that we saw, with the Avengers and all those types of movies, with what we've seen in the first three phases of Marvel. He's like, okay, this TVA has power, and his whole goal to meet the timekeepers themselves, and have an audience with them and figure out what they are. I think he says to Lady Loki / Enchantress, he's like, I'm gonna meet the timekeepers, overthrow a TVA, and I want you to be my lieutenant. I don't think his plan is that far off. I think that's possible motivation for him in terms of just, he's about power, it's about survival, and I think he sees that the TVA can give him that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's
seems right for the picking.
It's still TBD to see which way he goes, right? And I think,
TBD on the TVA.
And I think that's what makes the character interesting. It's not like he's just an innocent good guy all of a sudden is just going to do what's right and be, a superhero with a cape. He's not Captain America, right? He is still Loki. He's still mischievous. He's still about himself first and foremost.
So I'm going
to I'm curious to see how the show's going to take it, and what way he's going to go with his progression.
I think I would push back on that. I think that's what I think that's what the creators want us to think.
Sure.
So he himself wants everyone to think that. He has not hidden that fact very well at all.
Sure.
I think his endgame is going to be to save Asgard. I think he saw Asgard.
That's a good one.
Sure. So he saw that it was destroyed.
Yep.
And I think he is going to do everything in his power. It's going to take him on a weird journey, and it's going to take him on some weird loop-de-loops. But I think his goal is going to be to save Asgard, and I wonder if that is going to be if that motivation, that core motivation to save Asgard, is going to lead to the unraveling of everything. And I think I like that idea because it would be the opposite of everything that Loki's done. Loki is all about for himself, selfish. He causes chaos and does bad things, causes bad things for bad reasons. I think it would be a great idea to play with where he causes bad things for a good reason, right? It would be so poetic, right. I think, where he tries to do the right thing, the good thing, the honorable thing, the hero thing, right? And it leads to a multiverse of madness.
What if this is how it happens, right? Remember when they want to, he wants to determine if doing stuff in the apocalyptic event does anything. His first suggestion is going to Ragnarok at Asgard.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What if part of his plan is to go to Ragnarok, talk to himself, warn him of this X, Y, and Z are happening, right? Because I remember when I saw Infinity War.
Yeah.
Right? With Loki, he gives up the time stone. He just has his plan at that point was to be in Thanos' guard, give him the stone, and then take out a dagger and stab him, right?
Yeah. Terrible plan.
Objectively a horrible plan.
The worst plan he's ever had.
To a Titan who already has a couple stones in his possession, right? What if his TVA self this is part of the sacred timeline, right? Or whatever.
Whatever the fuck that
right?
means. Right.
So he knew that this was going to happen. He's like, I want you to do this, but to do it, you do like a projection. They even have the whole thing. Loki signs 101, the difference between a projection and the mind projection and all that type of stuff.
Right.
What if that was
an
part
illusion
of it?
or a projection?
He, again, once again, right? Loki is the master of faking his death, faked his death. Through this way, and the series will end with us going back to that scene, him being crushed, dying. They leave, the Black Order and Thanos leave,
and then
Loki just
he's like
shows up.
Dude, I love that. I love
knowing he also doesn't need to help the Avengers because he knows they're gonna save the day.
They're
going to save the world.
Yeah,
he knows what's gonna happen, and that's what he does.
Yeah. Oh man, I kind of love that so much. Yeah, and honestly, and that goes back to what the timekeepers allow, the sacred timeline. What is it, and if it's still intact by the end of the show. So. And that's the thing about this show is that it could go in so many different ways, but will Marvel do the thing where all of our theories are wrong and it's the most simple explanation ever?
Likely.
Probably. I do love that, though. And then I guess the last thing is Mobius a clone? Or is he created out of something? Or is he a person plucked out of history? What do we think?
I think he's being set up to have some type of revelation of his origin and who he is. It's something that he hasn't thought about, but... That doesn't mean that whatever the answer isn't going to affect him in some way, shape, or form. I think he's a character that's been introduced to be thrown off kilter at some point, and I think that would throw him off kilter.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. We just laid out a whole bunch of bold predictions, so I don't know. I mean, do you have a specific episode 3 prediction? I personally love everything we've talked about so far.
Jubilee shows up.
Jubilee? Are you actually going with the most random X-Men I can think of?
Okay, my bold prediction for episode 3.
Yeah.
Specifically, I'm gonna go bold here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna piggyback off of Michael, and I'm
Oh.
gonna say Kang shows up.
Wow.
In episode
That is bold.
episode
3.
3.
Of a 6-episode show.
Yes.
Is it 6?
6 episodes.
It is 6, okay. Wow, we're almost halfway
as
through.
we've been told. Maybe there's more. Maybe they're like, surprise, there's another 6
Surprise,
episodes.
motherfucker.
That would be a well-kept surprise.
Instead of a post-credit scene, there's a post-show episode.
Oh, man. That's the only way they can top
They're like,
a post-credit scene.
And for the
That's
next 6 weeks, it's just Loki 2.
Loki? Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to say Kang shows up, and he actually is our antagonist.
Oh,
and he
shit.
shows up near the end of episode 3, and we're going to see him causing time problems for the last 3.
Okay. I
That's
like
my
that.
bold prediction.
I'm gonna have my episode 3 prediction is gonna be a Loki out of time shows up to warn our current Loki about something related to something.
Where did they go at the end of this episode?
Where do they go?
It's a great
I would
question.
assume maybe another
Apocalyptic event.
to hide out.
Yeah.
But then I guess if they're destroying time, does it matter? I don't know. It's a
So
good
we
question.
don't know.
If I had to guess,
I'm gonna guess that they're on a beach.
well, if I had to surmise, right? She opens up the portal.
Yeah.
She,
And then dropped a whole bunch of.
She stares down Loki, almost like follow me, right? She does the little wave, but she keeps it open long enough, obviously, for him to run through.
Yeah, pretty obvious.
If she didn't want him to come through, she would have closed it immediately or whatever.
You would think.
So I think there's a part of her that obviously wants to show him something. So it must
It's all
be
part of our plan.
maybe it's something to show him where she's from, what she's about. Maybe it's her own time that we're going back to, or like where she's from.
I think to me, because she's trying to avoid the TVA, and she did just drop a bomb. Actually, here's the thing. So maybe she just dropped literal bombs on the TVA.
Boom goes the
So
dynamite.
now maybe she doesn't need to hide out in apocalyptic events anymore. So
Yeah.
now she's going to do what her actual plan is, which is obviously
Fight Kang.
to, I don't know, live her life. Go shopping.
Yeah.
Don't know. But
I like your idea of it being like multiple, like maybe multiple Mobiuses, but like she's not from, like we'll circle back around.
I do love that idea.
Because there's a lot of circles in the show. I don't know if you noticed that, but all the
I
set
did
design
after
is
you
very
pointed it out.
circly.
Yeah. You pointed out like halfway. You texted like halfway through I was watching the episode, and then the next scene was Loki coming out of the elevator, and every light was a circle.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, that's a lot of circles.
And I just think it's interesting that Mobius, who, if we've all watched True Detective Season 1, we know the Mobius strip, that time is a flat circle.
Yeah.
And Mobius, though, of all characters, goes, we'll all meet at the end of time.
Right.
In a peace, in peace.
Which is not how that works.
Probably not. So I think they're trying to get to this as a circle. And if I had to guess, I think this is the very heart of Phase 4. And will be the very center of everything that happens. Will be able to come back to this show.
Well,
Ooh,
another popular theory in relation to that is, remember in episode 1, we're told that this multiverse war happened, and then the timekeepers came and made the sacred timeline. There's nothing to say that this isn't that or the beginning of that multiverse war.
Oh, that's true.
Exactly.
Especially like when we talk about that the famous Mobius line of time works a little differently here. And we don't know where we are in time because remember, again, Loki even says when they're in Pompeii, we're from the future. He's like, we're from the future, right?
And Noise doesn't answer.
Yeah, there's no answer.
Classic Mobius. Classic Owen Wilson.
Where are they from?
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of this episode, by the way. We're
Pompeii?
from the future, right?
Oh, yeah.
TVA seems like a future.
Yeah.
Seems like a future.
Tom Hiddleston can do no
I also
wrong.
like that people pointed out when they go to 2050-ish, when they go to the Roxxon place.
Oh, Alabama?
Yeah, when they go to the supermarket and everything on the shelves look like they're from 2021.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
Classic.
TV production. Can't redesign for a little futuristic
soapbox. Or they're making a prediction about 2050.
Or there is no time travel and it's all illusion. Yeah. There is no TVA.
I mean,
it's all in Loki's head. He's in an insane asylum.
Dream.
I mean, the show doesn't seem to understand how time lines or dimensions work.
That is a discussion for episode 5 of the show.
How do you get a hairy Loki without...
He's a master of illusion.
It doesn't make any sense. At what point did he become hairy? Did he drink a potion and it changed him forever? And
maybe he did.
That's the explanation.
Maybe he was.
Where does a blonde Lady Loki come from? Where does he split off from his normal timeline and become a blonde Lady
That's
Loki?
why I like the idea that it's not Loki, it's Enchantress version 2 that Arjuna explained. I like that a lot. It's someone that he has set up to be this agent of chaos. I like that a lot. And that would explain why it's not Loki at all.
Yeah, she's taking him back to
doesn't even make sense.
To the team of Lokis that we'll see for the next 3 episodes.
Yes. All right, kids, as Ravi likes to say. All right, kids, I think it's that time. We're gonna introduce. We're gonna have Mr. Michael in here too. So, Mr. Michael, was episode 2 of Loki good to you?
It doesn't make sense, but it is very good.
Nice. That's a perfect place to be, I say.
Nothing matters.
Yep.
Arjuna.
That's me.
Was Loki, Mischief of Time, super guy, episode 2, good.
Yeah, it was good. And much like you said, there's still a lot of questions. The mechanics are a little funky.
A little.
I do like. Like when Loki's doing the whole his explanation with the salad and everything, and he's like, "It's a clumsy metaphor," because it's kind of hard.
Like the show,
right? It's hard to explain this type of stuff, but I don't think you're supposed to think about the mechanics of the time travel. Maybe.
Oh, I hope we are.
And
I hope they explain it.
And I think maybe there are supposed to be holes in it because it's not supposed to make sense, and because that's what they're telling us. The TVA doesn't make sense. It's not exactly what it appears to be. Maybe that's why all the stuff at the Roxxon just looked like it's from 2020.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who knows? Maybe that's
why.
Why.
Their idea of fixing things is to disintegrate it. And surely time... Yeah,
hence
disintegrate everything and
nefarious.
It'll somehow correct it.
Yeah, exactly. Hence nefarious. A lot of genocide going on in this show. Like,
if we just
blow it up.
Take a grenade and put it at the time thing and blow it up. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Nothing can go wrong.
Nothing has gone wrong.
Nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
Except, but if you take all those bombs and you set off too many, then you destroy the timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Krishna, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to grade myself a solid 7 out of 10.
Was Loki episode 2, Lost in New York, good?
It was very good. And all the weird science, time travel, and all that stuff, it doesn't make sense, but it's interesting. But at the heart of the show, what I really love, at least in this episode, is this argument or this analysis on existence itself. And I hope they do more of that. I hope they just forget about that part and just go right back to, I don't hope it doesn't become a whole time heist again. I want to keep those discussions of what's real existence. I want to keep those going because to me that's always the most interesting question that you can have. Totally. So keep going. Folks, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Was It Good? You can find us on Twitter at Was It Good, on Instagram at Was It Good BTM. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/wasitgood. We're on there every Monday and Friday recording this podcast live, so you should definitely join us. Jump in the comments, tell us your questions, but not your concerns because Ravi doesn't like that.
No, because he's not here. We want your concerns.
Yeah, you're right. You have about 30 more seconds to tell us your concerns.
Please at Ravi Ramgopal on Twitter.
Morbid News, maybe?
I think it's Ravi.
Oh, he changed it, huh?
I think that's his Twitter.
No,
I think his Twitter handle.
This.
Let me double check. I believe his Twitter handle is at Ravi Ramgopal. Might be an underscore in there.
Yeah.
It is at Ravi_Ramgopal.
There you go.
Tell
him your concerns.
Your Was It Good concerns.
It's true.
He will personally answer every single one.
He will. We also have a website where you can leave your concerns at wasitgood.info. Newsletter coming soon. Next podcast will be on Monday, hopefully with myself and Ravi on the latest episode of The Bad Batch. So stay tuned for that.
I'm gonna say I won't be on that podcast.
Thank God.
I will say.
No, just kidding. Just kidding.
Best episode of Bad Batch. So
wow. What a tease. What a tease. Bye, everyone.